Hey everyone, today I want to talk about how I've been using the KO2 to sequence the OPZ. So this is another video more about using the KO2 as a composer and as a controller. And I've just found that to be really helpful because the OPZ, like if you want to do a pattern that's longer than 8 bars, you're going to run into issues with polyphony and with the OPZ being able to record those notes accurately. So I've found the KO2 doesn't have those issues, and so I've been sticking with doing the drums on the OPZ, but I've been kind of creating this whole kind of setup here. So first I want to talk about how I've got this set up and connected and all the settings and all of that. And then I want to show you two examples. One that's going to just be like a bare bones example of setting this up to control an external controller and setting up basically one chord per row. And then I'm going to do an example that really demonstrates the workflow that I've been practicing lately. And so that's a little bit more advanced. So let's go ahead and talk about how things are routed and the settings that I currently have. First of all, everything is routed pretty intensely. I have a pedal that's going to send program change connected to the input of the KO2. I have, for MIDI, I've got MIDI output from the KO2 to the OPZ. And then I have MIDI output from the OPZ to SimplexFM. In terms of audio, I've got SimplexFM routed into the KO2, which applies effects and also can add in the KO2 samples. And then the KO2 sends audio to OPZ. And like I said before, OPZ is handling drums and it is handling effects and things like that. So let's just make sure that our MIDI settings are all good to go. So I'm going to hold Shift and I'm going to hit Erase, which will bring me to the System menu. And if I hit plus, it will review my music by calling it mid. This actually brings up the MIDI menu. So let's go ahead and hit Enter to enter the MIDI menu, Enter to hit Enter clock mode, and then I'm going to hit plus and hit Enter. So now it's sending the clock out to the OPZ. Now I've got to set up my OPZ settings by holding down metronome and screen. And I want to make sure 2 is on, so that's MIDI in. I want to make sure 4 is on, which is MIDI clock in. And for my purposes, because I'm also having this echo the notes out to the simplex, I would turn on 3 and 7. Right now, I'm not going to turn on 7 or 8 quite yet because that'll come into play later on in the video, and I just want to focus on this at least for now. So the first example I have is going to be using just a basic chord progression from a pretty well-known song. Shout out to my wife, Sarah, for suggesting this one in particular. Each pad is set to a specific note, and it's all going to channel 8, which right now is one of the OPZ's engines. So the way that I did that was I opened up the Sound Edit menu, then I moved to MIDI, or mid, and then I changed it so that all of these are going out on channel 8. Basically, I, note by note, made an A minor chord. Then I copied each of these and pasted them above it. G major, E minor, F major. So this makes it so I can play these chords, or I could play something like that, right? So there's a lot of ways that I could do this. And right now, this is probably the simplest setup. So I'm going to record it here, and then we're going to get more complicated from this point on. Okay, so that's kind of the simplest way of doing this. And that assumes that you know how to make chords, which if you don't, you should watch my other videos. But this can work with any major or minor chord. It gets tricky with sevenths because you only have 3 per row here. You could always do it by columns, but this is something that I haven't used much yet. I just thought it might be helpful to some people. So the next step in making this a little bit more complicated is going to be going back to Sound Edit mode. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to enable MIDI echo and program change. And that's because I'm going to make the simplex play this chord progression instead. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to split the voices between the bass, the lead, and the chords track. So let me go ahead and turn off the chords engine, and then just for good measure, I'm going to initialize the last two voices on the simplex. Okay. Cool. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to change it so that this whole column, each one is going to be channel 5, which is going to go to the bass track. So this is still going to be channel 8, and right here, this middle column, I'm going to change to channel 6. And so now what I've done is I've split them between 3 voices, but because these are all just in their initial state, they're going to sound the same. So right now, I'm going to, now that we've switched them to the different voices, I'm actually just going to erase this entire pattern. And then I'm going to play this back in, but I've changed the octaves that these pads are in. So right now, I've got this note. I'm actually going to make it even lower. I'm going to make it A in the second octave, and I'm going to do the same with these other notes. I'm going to make this G in the second octave, E in the second octave, and then F in the second octave. Here, I'm just going to lower these down to being just, I guess, 1 octave lower than they currently are. So that's going to be C4, B3, G3, and then A3. Okay, so now I'm going to play in that same chord progression, but we're going to have different voices playing the notes. So let's go, and they're also in different octaves. So we've basically taken these chords and we've arranged them across different instruments. So let's go ahead and play our song again. So at this point, I'd probably make some edits to make the timbres a little bit different between all the voices. So at this point, we have some somewhat different sounding voices. And so that's just one example of how you might set up these pads to be to play a chord, and how you then might take just some chords and change them between voices, switch, which voice is handling what note and all of that. For my second example, I'm actually going to use an OPZ pattern, and it's going to be a little bit more involved. So I already have the drum track on the OPZ, and it currently sounds just like this. So just kind of like this echoey sound. And my goal here is going to be to then use the KO2 to just kind of almost augment this, just really add a longer synth line or more complex bass line if I want, add in some performance effects and things like that. So let's go ahead and get started with that. The first thing I'm going to do is going to be a bit weird. I am going to go ahead and say I want this pad to actually record program change for me. And so I'm actually going to set this to channel 2 because I've got the OPZ on project 2. And then I have that off-screen pedal that will send the program change commands that I'm wanting it to send. Like it can cycle through the first part, second part, back to the first, whatever. So in this case, I'm just going to play the first 4. And just for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to go ahead and record a program change. Oops. Here. And there we go. Oh, but actually it probably recorded all 4, didn't it? Let's check. Nope. Okay. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to go ahead and just record that program change to this first step. I'm going to switch to scene 2, and I'm going to record the next program change there. Oops, not scene 2, pattern 2. pattern 3, I'm going to record the next one. And then, of course, pattern 4, I'm going to record the final one. So what this will do is that if I want to use the KO2 to go back to a scene or a pattern, it will automatically bring the OPZ to where I want it to be. There's one more thing I want to do with this group D, which is going to be entirely devoted to controlling the OPZ. And that's going to be, I'm adding some effects, some of the performance effects to the drum tracks. So this is one of the coolest things that I found on the OPZ. I'm going to use tracks, or pads 1, 2, 3, and maybe 4, 5, 6. Actually, let's just do 1, 2, 3 for now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that, go into MIDI mode, set my MIDI channel to 13, which is the performance track. And then I'm going to change this note to actually being, that's going to be F in the negative first octave. And what this is each octave on the performance track represents the punch-in effects for one of these individual tracks. So I'm going to copy this pad. I'm going to paste it here and paste it here. And all I'm going to change is the note. So I'm going to make this F. And F. And so now, if I play this, so I find that pretty handy, especially because the performance track, you're very limited with your polyphony and with your resolution, and that's not the case on the KO2. In addition, you can't easily see any effects that aren't just from for the main, all the drums or all the synths. So for example, in this case, let me check and see if which track indicates how long this track is. So I think it's 8. Yeah. So if it's 8 bars, I'm going to make this 8 bars as well. And then what I'll do is I'm just going to play through this, and I'm going to mute those different drums as the sequencer is going. I don't have any specific thing in mind. I'm just trying to demonstrate that you can get a lot more resolution out of 16 bars in the KO2. Even though there's nothing recorded on the performance track, we've got all of that recorded perfectly with an awesome amount of resolution. And we can edit those individual notes as well if we want, move them, etc. So I think that that's just really, really cool. Next thing I want to demonstrate, though, is adding in a bass line. So I'm actually going to go ahead and commit this. And then I'm going to change this to D2, which is going to be our second pattern here. So right now, what I've got is, so if I play here, it's going to play the first one normally with my performance track, with all the performance track notes recorded. And it automatically will change here because I have that program change at the very beginning. So I'm going to make this also 8 bars. And let's just do a little bit of that drum sequencing here, and then I'll add like a bass line or something like that. Cool. So now we've got a little bit more drum arrangement just from using those punch-in effects. So let's go ahead and add in a bass line. I don't have anything really planned here, so this could be really ugly and or pointless, but I'm going to give it a try anyway. So what I'll do is I'll just set this pad here to be my bass pad. And I'll do that by putting this pad into keys mode. Then I'm going to sound edit mode, and I'm just going to make this control channel 5. So I'm just going to keep this at 8 bars. And, you know, this could easily be sequenced on my OPZ. And for the bass, I might do that, especially for these like long sustained bass. But for now, I just want to demonstrate how this works. So just bear with me. Actually, first thing is I want to have this come in on the second scene. And let's extend it out to 8. So some other advantages of this on the KO2 is that if I hold record or press record and I hit shift and plus, I can now edit things, you know, if I want to remove this last note for some reason, it'll play the first 8 bars normally, and then the next 8 bars, it will not have that very last note. I don't care about that. I just want to demonstrate that. So we've got our bass figured out. So I'm actually going to commit this. Then I'm going to move this back to 3 because, again, we want to make sure that we go onto pattern 3 when we switch to scene 3. And I'm going to now go ahead and add in, I'm going to use this pad to control the lead track. So I'm going to go into keys mode, sound edit, and I'm going to go to channel 6. And, I mean, that's it, right? But I'm going to do something really weird because the Simplex has some kind of cool functions here. First of all, let me copy the bass track everywhere, so that way at least it's a consistent sound. And then I'm going to figure out what I want to do about the lead track here. Oh, this has an OPZ engine up, so I'm going to turn that off. Turn off the... Oh, that probably messed up the sounds. Let's see. Okay, real quick, let me just fix that. Okay, so that's close enough to what I was looking for, so I'm just going to paste that everywhere. And then for the lead track, I'm going to go over here, and let's see... yeah, I don't love this, so let's just come up with something else. Or maybe I'll find one of the presets I've made. Yeah, that sounds good enough, I guess. And what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to make it so that this has a pretty soft attack as well. And I'm going to make the 2 voices interfere with each other. Then I'm going to add a 3rd layer that's going to be a little pluckier. Actually, maybe this layer will be the plucky one. Let me take that back. So I'm going to just change... I've mapped out all of the Simplex's parameters to the OPZ, and that'll just be a future video when I actually go into depth about it. Okay, cool. So that sounds kind of plucky, and then I'm going to enable the comb filter, which is going to make it repeat a bunch. Cool. And actually, let's just make it key track. Let's just go ahead and just add in some, I don't know, what kind of arbitrary notes. Cool. So what I'm going to do now, just for fun, is I'm going to make these 2 voices interfere with each other, because that's kind of like the Simplex's strength. So I'm actually going to make it so that the bass is modulated by the lead track. So let's hear what this sounds like. I don't know if you can hear it, but the bass track was going pretty crazy there, so I might have slightly overdone it there, but let's hear if it's extreme. So let me change how much that modulates it to being more subtle. Yeah, so this is, the timing's annoying me more and more. So I'm going to assume that 16th notes are probably fine here. So let me correct just the lead track there. So yeah, not maybe my favorite song, but I'm going to commit this, and then I'm going to go ahead and erase this entire track here for the lead. Going to go back to scene 2, and I'm going to copy this pattern, move back to scene 3, paste that pattern, and then I'm going to, let's paste it on B as well. So I'm going to erase the lead track on C. Then on B, I'm actually going to erase the bass track. And the reason for that is I want that same melody to be played, but now with a sample instead. So let's see if, yeah, okay, so let's actually edit that. So I know that this was kind of a little bit less structure for the second part. I just mostly wanted to show how I've actually been using this, which is admittedly like overcomplicated, but I hope that you learned something along the way. Not everything I make is this complicated. I'm mostly like alternating between the two devices, and my goal is just like to make things really fast and really precise. And yeah, hopefully you learned something from all of this kind of weirdness that I've gone through. So let's go ahead and I'll just show you a playthrough of this, and I might do some talking over it. We'll see.